morning, good afternoon, good evening. The African Union has rejected Tanzania's election, stating that Tanzanians did not vote for Hassan. The AU has labeled her government illegitimate. You cannot overstate the importance of that statement. One only hopes that the AU will stand firm and force that government to go into a government of national unity arrangement where the nation can sort out the problems that have led to this. Implement all the democratic reforms to ensure that this will never happen again. If the AU stood firm on that, it will be a historic day for Africa, but more significantly, it will be a historic day for Tanzania and the people of Tanzania. We in Africa cannot pretend that the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections decades after independence in this day and age is one of the most shameful things in our history. Here is what this particular television station was saying on this matter.
Same time, the African Union Observers Mission on the just concluded and disputed elections in Tanzania reveals how the elections were manipulated into a resounding Samia Suluhu victory. The Observers report indicates cases of ballot stuffing, internet blackouts, and abductions, and how they compromised the integrity of the elections.
Naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, nitaihifadhi, nitailinda na kuitetea.
The dust is settling on Tanzania's controversial election that handed President Samia Suluhu her first elected term. The elections, which also handed the ruling party, CCM, the majority in parliament, continue to draw criticism over the manner in which it was conducted. The latest report from one of the observer missions, the Africa Union, paints a damning picture of the environment during and after election day. The observers say the election failed to comply with the AU's principles and standards for democratic elections. The AU observers noted that there was voter apathy in most polling stations across the country, and even then, the few voters were allowed to vote without identifying themselves. The mission also noted that in polling stations where only presidential ballot boxes were set up, there were instances of ballot stuffing where voters were issued with multiple ballots to vote, compromising the election's integrity.
That is very sad indeed. I think for the people of Zimbabwe, it will be good to learn some lessons here. The people of Tanzania, when they realize that the process is flawed, so flawed, participating in it was futile. They did not participate. This is in stark contrast to what has been happening in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, when the opposition were told repeatedly that the process is flawed, so flawed you cannot win, they still insisted in participating. And the reason for it? Greed. Pure and simple. This is what David Coulthard said following the 2013 elections. The election process was so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step was to withdraw. So the question one would ask is, then why didn't you withdraw? And he explained it in the book. He said that the MDCN tried to get the MDCT to agree on a coalition, to agree that they would not participate in the flawed elections. But when they failed to unify the two parties, they both decided to participate because each one of them feared that if the other one, if they do not participate and the other one do, they will go on to win all the available few gravity seats that Zanu PF normally gives away. In other words, they went ahead and participated out of greed. That cannot be overemphasized. So they gave Zanu PF legitimacy, knowing fully well that they are giving Zanu PF legitimacy just for the sake of the few gravity seats that Zanu PF was giving away. SADC and the AU condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections as flawed and illegal, but they could not go the extra mile and deny the regime legitimacy because nearly 2 million CCC supporters participated in the 2023 elections and voted for Chamisa. We cannot pretend that this is not significant. This is significant. The problem with the opposition in Zimbabwe is that they sold out actually during the GNU. When the GNU was formed, the primary task of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. But when the MDC leaders were sworn in, Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office. The E-Class Mercedes-Benz limos for all the deputy ministers, all the ministers, the 2 deputy prime ministers, and Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai himself. The MPs, senators, they were all paid very generous salaries and allowances. And for Morgan Tsvangirai himself, he got the $4 million Islands mansion. And with their snouts in the feeding trough, they forgot about the reforms. This is what happened. And ever since the GNU, they have continued to participate even when they know the elections were flawed. because Zanu PF enticed them to participate. Zanu PF wanted them to participate to get legitimacy. And so we have a situation here where the opposition have been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF was rigging those elections. Here is Professor Jonathan Moyo explaining why it was absolutely madness to participate in these flawed elections in Zimbabwe.
Chigumba is the mother of the rigging, and Malaba is the father of the rigging, endorsed what the mother was doing. It is actually scandalous. You see, ZEC is not supposed to be controlled by any authority.
Yeah, it's supposed to be independent.
It is an independent constitutional body. In fact, independent commission. It's a Chapter 12 institution. But ZEC did not run anything important. It never did. The computers were run by Africom. The registration, accreditation, and so forth were run by a CIO company. So between the CIO and the army, they ran the processes, the operations, using their instruments. Either Matsanga, who is actually active, she's employed. She joined the, she not joined, she was seconded to the electoral body in 2008 as a divisional intelligence officer. Now she is a director in the CIO. As we speak right now, she's a director, and she was congratulated and rewarded for rigging the 2018 election, and she was given a house in Borodale, a posh mansion in there. So there is a serious problem that whereas on paper ZEC is supposed to be an independent constitutional body that runs elections transparently, efficiently, and impartially. No, it doesn't. It doesn't because it does not even itself run. The elections are run for ZEC by the securocrat.
So my advice to the people of Tanzania is that make the most of this opportunity. Let's hope that Tanzania will form a government of national unity, and you, the people, will see to it that those people in that GNU implement all the democratic reforms to make sure that what happened in Tanzania is never, ever repeated again. Please don't make the same mistake that we in Zimbabwe made during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, where not even one token reform was implemented. And I hope for the case of Zimbabwe that this brings once again the focus on the opposition. Why have you been participating in flawed elections, so flawed, so illegal, that you yourself admitted the only logical step was to withdraw? The people must wake up to the reality that they were doing it out of greed. And we must wake up to the reality that the opposition will drag us into 2028 elections on the basis of yet another lie that they will win those elections, or which is at present the position that they are fighting to stop Mnangagwa corrupting the constitution to extend his stay in power. Extending Mnangagwa's stay in power is irrelevant in the context of rigged elections. If Zanu PF rigs the 2028 elections, they will have a Zanu PF dictator in power. Whether it be Chiwenga or somebody else, to me, it's neither here or there. So even if Mnangagwa is able to force Parliament to extend his stay in power beyond 2028, the choice between Mnangagwa or another Zanu PF dictator, to me, is not a choice at all. We must aim at ending the dictatorship, not stopping one dictator, Mnangagwa, and tolerating another, as we did in 2017. Our fight is a different one from Tanzania. But we must be prepared for that fight. 2028 is around the corner. It's only 3 years away. There is no chance that Zanu PF will implement any meaningful democratic reforms between now and then. And so our position must be very clear. We must not participate in those flawed elections. Not even under the pretext that we are stopping Mnangagwa's ED 2030 agenda. If we stop that and Zanu PF gets in, it will be an empty victory. We must not participate in those flawed elections. If we don't, I believe SADC and the AU will deny that Zanu PF regime legitimacy. And we will have another bite of the cherry, another chance to form another government of national unity whose task would be to implement those reforms. And I can rest assure you, this time we will see to it that the reforms are implemented. We should know where the real fight is going to take place. Reforms. Free, fair, and credible elections. That is where our fight should have been all along. We allowed ourselves to be sidetracked by MDC CCC leaders with promises that they plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, when in reality they were lying. So to our friends in Tanzania, I wish you all the best. This chaos is unfortunate, but make the most of it. Make sure you implement the reforms and make sure that in future this madness of rigged elections does not happen ever again in your country. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.